Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tearing down the illusion of the billionaire checking account and looking at the actual nuts and bolts mechanics of extreme wealth. Look, we constantly see headlines obsessing over the richest people on Earth, right? But we rarely stop to look at the invisible, structural blueprints that make those unimaginable fortunes possible in the first place. Well, we're going to change that right now.
All right, let's dive right into this by looking at Elon Musk. His net worth floats somewhere between $200 and $400 billion, just depending on the exact day you check the markets. And that massive fluctuation already tells us something absolutely crucial. Billionaire wealth isn't a static number. I mean, that swing alone is literally the equivalent of the entire gross domestic product of a small nation, just evaporating and reappearing based almost entirely on market moods. It's a highly sensitive, constantly moving target.
Now, here's where the massive contrast comes in. When you hear that Elon Musk or Gautam Adani just lost $20 billion before lunch, they didn't misplace a mountain of liquid cash. They didn't lose a single dime from their actual bank accounts. Their paper equity simply dropped. Paper equity is just the perceived financial value of the corporate shares they hold. It's not a giant pile of gold sitting in some cartoonish bank vault. It's an assigned value that shifts dramatically the second market confidence changes. So we aren't just going to list off rich people today. Instead, we're mapping out 5 distinct strategic playbooks they use to build and keep their empires. The illusion of cash, the patience premium, owning the pipes, the psychology of exclusivity, and ultimately the single wealth rule that binds them all together. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the illusion of cash, and exactly why billionaire wealth is a moving target. This concept right here, it's everything. It explains exactly why billionaires like India's Gautam Adani can experience a historic crash when a damning short seller report from Hindenburg Research hits the press. He lost billions overnight, yet his net worth eventually stabilized at a staggering $60 to $70 billion. His wealth is heavily built on investor confidence in paper equity. And here's the real secret. Billionaires use this perceived value as leverage to borrow real-world cash from banks. That's exactly how they buy their mega yachts and mansions without drawing a massive salary, completely legally sidestepping traditional income tax. Wild, right?
Which brings us to Section 2, the patience premium. Basically, the superpower of doing absolutely nothing.
This reveals a highly underrated strategy in the history of wealth. Take Warren Buffett, who's let his money patiently compound for over 80 years, or Steve Ballmer. He never founded a company, he simply held onto his stock since being employee number 30 at Microsoft. Today, Ballmer earns nearly $1 billion a year just in stock dividends because he simply refused to sell his shares. Seriously, sometimes the person who just shows up, does the work early on, and then essentially does nothing but wait, wins the entire long game. And you want to talk about the terrifying scale of that patience? The children of Sam Walton didn't build Walmart. They inherited the shares and just held on to them. Today, the combined compounding wealth of Jim, Rob, and Alice Walton possesses more financial gravity than the bottom 40% of the entire American population combined. 3 heirs outweigh over 130 million everyday working people. That is the relentless, silent math of generational wealth compounding over decades. And that perfectly tees up this quote, which is honestly the secret engine of extreme wealth. The whole system is designed so that once your equity hits escape velocity, your physical presence in an office chair is completely irrelevant. Whether it's Jeff Bezos stepping down as CEO of Amazon or Larry Page and Sergey Brin stepping back from running Google, none of them got poorer. Their enormous stakes just keep printing revenue and inflating their net worth entirely on autopilot. Moving on to Section 3, owning the pipes, the invisible infrastructure of wealth. Dominating a massive layer of infrastructure creates a moat that is almost impossible to cross. Think about Larry Ellison's Oracle databases quietly powering global hospitals and banks, or Carlos Slim controlling the telecom pipes of Latin America, or Mukesh Ambani bringing internet to hundreds of millions of people in India. At this extraordinary scale, these empires become virtually immune to competition. Why? Because replacing a nation's entire telecom grid or uprooting a global banking database is simply too expensive and too painful for any rival to ever attempt. And you know what? Wealth at this level often comes from controlling the most mundane, unglamorous necessities imaginable. Zhang Shanshan was literally a mushroom farmer before he built a $60 billion fortune dominating bottled water distribution in China. Michael Bloomberg rents 300,000 clunky data terminals to Wall Street at $25,000 a year each, and he keeps his company private so he never has to answer to shareholders. And then there's Bill Gates. He gave us the personal computer revolution, but today, he's heavily diversified his billions into literal trash collection and railways. Turns out, boring is incredibly lucrative.
Okay, section 4, the psychology of exclusivity. We're talking irrational premiums and perfect timing. Unlike the wild, dramatic roller coaster of tech bets in AI and the metaverse, luxury magnates like Bernard Arnault and François Penalteau rely on a totally different logic. They bank on the psychological fact that even when global markets crash, people are still going to pay irrational premiums for a $5,000 handbag. Why? Because true extreme wealth doesn't actually feel a recession. The margins on luxury goods are purely psychological, which makes it an incredibly resilient wealth engine through literally any economic weather. But when technology actually matches the cultural moment, boom, the results are explosive. Jensen Huang spent 30 years building NVIDIA, watching it get routinely underestimated. Then ChatGPT launched. Suddenly, the entire world realized that artificial intelligence required an immense, almost unfathomable amount of computing power, and NVIDIA had the exact hardware everyone needed. Huang's net worth rocketed past $100 billion. It's the ultimate payoff of the patience premium. He basically waited 3 decades for the future to finally catch up to his hardware. Now, we definitely have to acknowledge the hidden layer behind all of this, the network. Behind almost every visionary are early backers, like Peter Thiel putting $500,000 into a tiny college website called Facebook, or venture capital firms backing Airbnb when it was literally just an idea in a shared apartment. It's a stark reminder that at the highest echelons, wealth is fundamentally about access. It's about being in the right room with the right people to write a check before the rest of the world even knows the company exists. Which finally leads us to section 5, the ultimate wealth rule, the great unifier of the billionaire class.
Here is the ultimate takeaway, the mathematical truth that binds everything we've discussed today together. A paycheck is linear. It is mathematically impossible to save your way to $1 billion on a salary, no matter how hard you work. The mechanism for extreme wealth is always exponential. It's about owning equity in a platform that scales while you sleep. The scaling is what creates the immense wealth, and the ownership is what allows them to permanently capture it. Because scaling creates wealth and ownership captures it, while compounding quietly in the background, this entire system is fundamentally designed to accelerate the divide. The richer you get, the more your money grows completely on its own, totally detached from your daily labor. So if the richest fortunes are now effectively flying on autopilot, just how vast is the gap between a billionaire and everyone else going to become in the next 20 years?